Hey fam,
It's Gant.
and Jade, and welcome to this week's episode of the Good Black Podcast. All right. Well, hello. How are you?
I am well. I'm well. Yeah, I'm good. I'm doing well.
Are you sure?
Yes, I think about that. So I always delay when people ask me that because I want to genuinely give it thought to make sure that I'm actually doing okay and I'm giving an honest answer. So yes, no, I'm doing well this week. So that sounds unconvincing.
It does. Yeah.
But it is true. I really think about it. I'm like, how is the week that I've had? Like, how am I feeling today? I've had this little headache this week that hasn't quite gone away, but I think it's just all the pollen.
Oh yeah, it's out here.
Yes, but I will not be out here lying to y'all. No, I am doing well.
Okay. What's been going on? What's new in your world?
Not much. I think right now, like work considerations are things that I'm like making. I'm thinking about the show a lot and like what we can do to make it better and like how we can continue to advance it and let people listen. So thank you for listening if you are listening. And for you, thank you for listening to me, Jade. I appreciate you.
Anytime. Anytime. I feel like this is just a natural progression of how we were as kids.
Absolutely.
And so now we get to spend more time together as adults.
Yes, always thought about that. And I that's why I did the intro to the show that I did on my personal Instagram page. I was like, first of all, this was inevitable. Like there was absolutely going to be some point in our lives where we work together on something. And I'm glad it's this. I'm glad we were able to connect on it and like make it happen. Like I'm really proud of this. Like honestly, really super excited that we did this and like that the thing is done. So that was one of my goals for the year, to do more things than I talked about doing, because I found myself always saying like, oh, I thought about doing this thing, but it didn't come together. I thought about doing this, or I was talking about doing that. And I'm like, in 2021, I'm like, I'm going to do more things that I talk about. And so this was the first thing on that list for me. So nice. I'm excited.
Well, now that you said the thing is done, this will be our last show of the Good Black Podcast. No.
Well,
no.
Kidding. It's done. No, I'm just
kidding. Check that off the list.
Well, the starting of the thing is complete, I suppose I should say. So yeah, so how are things going with you? What's new with you?
Things are good. Things are fine. I am coming up on a busy month when it comes to my doula practice. So I'm a little nervous about that, just because between the top of April and mid-April, I have 5 clients that are supposed to be bringing babies into the world. And so just really hoping and talking to the creator about like, hey, can these babies come like when they're supposed to come, just so everyone can get a little rest. But yeah, that's one of the things that I'm a little nervous about, but also really excited. My clients seem really excited. So, just following their lead and doing all the things that I can to help them feel prepared. And then outside of that, just work. I've got some exciting transitions coming up and just having to manage those and kind of stair step people through that stuff. They messed up by giving me actual power and a directorship.
Not so power. Come on, director.
Gonna use it to my advantage and make some things happen, hopefully. But yeah, so it's been an interesting last 2 weeks, but they've been good. And then just trying to spend time with my partner, who also listened to the show. And nice. So we had a conversation about that. Shout out to you. You know who you are.
Come on, you know who you are.
but yeah, just trying to spend time with him. And just trying not to get burnt out. Like we've been in quarantine. We don't live together, but like we have been in quarantine or in lockdown for a year. Yeah. And it just, I don't know. Like they keep talking about there's an end in sight, but also people still out here licking doorknobs and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm like, do I actually want to re-enter society when people say it's okay? Or do I still give it a couple months? Who knows? We'll see. Stay tuned.
Yeah. So. So I have the unique distinction of living in Atlanta, and I think the worst of it for us in Atlanta was probably the first month. I would say probably between, from March to April.
Mm-hmm.
No, to through May. Through May.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I think after that point, it kind of got to a place where it was like, okay, well, we can't not go outside. It's like, so we definitely, so it's definitely been a little bit different, I think, for most other people, elsewhere in the world, in the country,
Mm-hmm.
because not the world. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely been different for people elsewhere in the country. Like Atlanta's been a little bit more liberal, with allowing
Yeah, they
people to
have.
be out and to go places and do the things. So I think for me, I don't feel like I'm in lockdown. I feel like I'm at home the appropriate amount of time
Mm-hmm.
because we're able to go places. Now, I will say, I think Atlanta restaurants have done a good job at making sure their restaurants are actually distant and that they're going around and cleaning. But we also frequent like the same places over and over again. We typically sit outside. We try to make sure we're far enough away from other people, and we always have our masks on. So always masks on, always hand sanitizer, always spraying things down. We try to make sure that we are just super careful. We are always wearing our masks. We are always in and out quickly wherever we go. We try to make sure that we sanitize. We keep hand sanitizer with us. We keep things sprayed down and cleaned as we're going out. And we also, my partner is a nurse, so we are very like anal about like we take our clothes off at the front door, like everything goes
Yeah.
directly into the washing machine. Like there's not much opportunity for us to have like external like contamination when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
like coming in the house. So we're super clean. And we tried, but we've had it. So, just for just for the world,
Oh
we
yeah,
both
I
had it.
forgot.
Yeah, girl, we didn't have the Rona.
I
So
think at one point I had it. I went to Trinidad last year with two of my best friends.
mhm,
And when we were coming back, like out of nowhere, we all got sick.
yeah.
And it was one of the worst feelings I can remember ever having. And I think that was it before, we learned about all this other stuff.
Mhm.
I thought it was just a really bad regular cold, but I think I remember texting my partner at one point, like, oh my God, I'm dying. Please save me. He
Oh
was like, oh
no.
no.
Yeah,
uh,
I will say that we were fortunate, like, and in that our symptoms were not as extreme as a lot of other folks, and and even though like there's this temptation to go back to life as to life as normal, like the reality is like y'all can't just walk around acting like 500,000 people not here no more, and that's
right.
in our country only.
Right.
Like,
Only.
don't
Yeah.
start thinking about the global, like death toll. Like this is serious. Like even if 50 million people have had it and only 5 million have passed away, like the reality is like it's still like that's a chance I'm not really willing to take like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we really do need to do a better job of being careful. Like I actually worked with somebody who yesterday was like, yeah, like I already got part one of my vaccination. Like when I get my second one, like I'm not wearing a mask. And I was like,
Huh. That's not
you
how that
lie,
works.
you a
That's not
lie,
how
and
that
the truth
works.
ain't in you. You're not coming up in my office and how
Mm-mm.
much you're not wearing no mask. I will be wearing my mask vaccinated or not. Because even if it's not that, like it can still help you from getting sick from other stuff. Like it
Right.
has been super helpful, like in the pollen season. And when I lived abroad, like they wore masks. That was
Mm-hmm.
a thing. Like people just wore masks. So yeah, that I really went off on a tangent there,
It's
but
okay.
Atlanta has not been quite as open, has not been quite as shut down as everybody else. So I feel like I feel a little bit different than if I were living like in New York or or somewhere that was a little bit more
Oh yeah.
open and
Yeah, I have coworkers in New York and they are going through it. On top of the
yeah,
fact that, it ravaged New York, they live in
yeah,
tiny little shoe boxes. So it's not
yes,
like when you're moving farther down south. I'm in the mid Atlantic. I at least have a little bit of space in my apartment. Like I can,
right.
at least my trek from my couch to my kitchen if I stretch it out, I could fully walk a whole minute. And then it would but it just,
Hmm.
so yeah, they are really going through it up there.
Yeah,
But hopefully we see some things turn around. Hopefully we see a decline in the number of cases across the board. Um, and yeah,
yeah,
that people continue to do what they need to do to keep themselves safe and to also worry about others. It's not just about you, also worry about others.
Yeah, like individualism is killing us. Like real talk.
It always
Like
has. It always has.
it yeah, like that is why like other nations have been able to do a better job at controlling, like the spread, is
Mhm.
because they are like, well, hey, we understand that this is for the collective good for me to stay home, or
Right.
for me to only spend 10 minutes in the grocery store as opposed to the 30 that I would spend picking the cabbage. Like, so yeah, like we really have to do a better job at caring about one another and like taking care of one another, and like and that doesn't require a whole lot of you, just to
Mm-mm.
just to be considerate, like wear your mask when you're out in public, wash your hands, like you don't have to get crazy, but like you do a little bit more than you usually do.
Yeah.
So
So
yes. Anyway,
here we are.
so all the dark stuff aside, welcome to the Good Black Podcast. So thank you all for listening. We appreciate you. And now we can go into the scroll if you're good with it, Jay.
Yep.
What's up, listeners? It's Gant from the Good Black Podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain it to you. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so you don't have to do the legwork of finding your own hosting site. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
All right. So first up in this scroll, I'm sure a lot of folks who are all over the interwebs have at some point seen this Saweetie and Quavo. Is it Saweetie or Sweetie?
I think I don't know. California people have like a different way of saying things. So I feel like it started out as Sweetie, like it's
All the
like,
extra letters.
yeah, but there's so many extra letters.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
but it's so weedy. I don't know if anybody pronounces it differently. I'm like Sweetie, because
Interesting.
why the letters?
Maybe she wants us to say it quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently they broke up.
Yeah.
What I can remember of like knowing that they were a couple, I think I found out that they were a couple last year. So I was like, oh, they broke up. But then to see, so for those of you who don't know, I mean, this is cute little hip hop beefy drama.
Yeah, man, yeah.
I guess he cheated on her.
There was a mention
Mm.
of a cheaterization going on.
Cheater that's not a word.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
We do the things. Black people make everything a word. It's fine.
That's true. Like Saweetie.
Yeah. Like Saweetie. Absolutely. Perfect.
But yeah, there was some cheaterization going on. And I guess somebody called it quits. I'm assuming it was her, just based on his follow-up response and how he
was corny.
Corny. Like I saw folks, I don't know if you saw the memes, but people were saying, Future must be so proud. I said, yes, because that is truly one of those lines that only a F-boy would try and spout out. You're not the woman I thought you were. And
right, which is super whack, because you
here.
clearly were not the man that she thought you were. But
okay.
and sure.
But how are you going to turn that around on her?
Right.
You're not the woman I thought you were because you didn't stay. Get out of here.
Right. And and I feel like Amanda Seales said this best, is like, people will always turn it around on you when you don't protect the wrong things that they did to you. And which is the case, is like, I don't owe you that. Like, I don't owe you any loyalty. Like, you aren't loyal to me. So why is it that I'm supposed to protect your public image in the face of you having been either unfaithful, or at the very least, you weren't who I thought you was, who I wanted you to be to me. So it's like, sure, this could have not been a public thing, absolutely. But at the end of the day, y'all were a very public couple. And then what'll happen is with her specifically as a woman, the image she'll go out and do something not having announced that y'all have broken up. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And then people will look at her like she's crazy.
Right. Not even like she's crazy. Like y'all slut shame her and be like, what you doing over here when you supposed to be so-and-so's girl? Like, you supposed to be, first of all, she doesn't belong to anyone.
She doesn't belong to anyone.
Yeah, she does not belong to anyone. Like people tried to make the whole like her appearing on Justin Combs' podcast when they, I guess, used to date or whatever a thing. And I'm like, I looked at the video of the thing. I'm like, she halfway looked at him most of the time. Like she was not paying dude any attention.
Any
She was
mind. I saw
literally
that
just
video.
having that conversation, which was like, which that's a whole other thing. But yeah, like so, like there was no way for her to win in public favor other than the way she did, which was a smooth take care.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
that's it.
so appreciated that. Like I
Like,
have been at that point
yeah.
where they are just trying to rally against you, trying to throw mud your way, and you're like, you know what? I'm not giving you any more energy than I have to. Take care, Quavadius, or whatever your name is.
Oh gosh. I'm not gonna get into this side thing, but I am gonna get into it. It's my show. So
Go off, King. Go off.
I can't. So okay, so dang. And a side thing, I was watching College Hill Atlanta.
I never watched that show.
Oh gosh, it's trash. You shouldn't have watched it. But was watching College Hill Atlanta a couple weeks ago, and there was a guy on the show, and he was an aspiring rapper, and he was like, I'm like watching, I'm looking at him, I'm looking at his mannerisms, I'm looking at where he's making his music, and I'm like, I'm willing to bet money this dude is from Gwinnett. And if you are not from Atlanta, that will not make sense to you, right? It won't make sense to you if you're not from Atlanta. But if you are from Atlanta, I'm looking at this, I'm like, I bet you this dude is from Gwinnett County. Lo and behold, I'm from Gwinnett County. I knew. And so is Quavo. You are Gwinnett County dude, and I'm editing myself heavily because I know my mama listening to this show. You are Gwinnett County dude trying to front like like you didn't struggled and you had it hard your whole life. Meanwhile, your parents live in a $600,000 house. Like, simmer down, you're fine. Like, calm down. Nobody told you was never gonna make it. No teacher like made you feel like crap. Like, simmer down, sir. And and but what it is that comes from like that persona is like the entitlement, the expectation that everybody should be doing things in service of you, but you haven't done anything in service to anybody else outside of throwing bags and outside of throwing Birkins and Bentleys.
But I think he took that Bentley back.
That was it's rumored that the Bentley was repossessed.
Allegedly,
also rumored that
but
it wasn't.
I also thought it was a lease, so it's not like you bought that for her.
Of course it was a lease. Of course it was. First of all, because unless you are actually buying it for the value of like being able to say I have the Bentley so that I can sell it back at any point in time and get the money out of it. Like, unless that's the purpose, like there's really no point in buying a vehicle when your life is about the stunt and about the show. Like, it makes sense to lease everything.
But just reports coming out that he took it back. You mean he just revoked the paper? Like, it's not like he bought it for her to begin with. So the nice thing about that was you just did paperwork for her and then had the car delivered.
Basically.
And then you took it back before the end of the lease.
Yeah. And
I'm confusion.
Like,
I'm confusion. Yeah. The nice thing about this gesture was the fact that she didn't have to do paperwork.
She didn't have to do it herself. And yeah, like, so and that's the other piece of this, right? Like, Saweetie ain't like, she ain't broke by anybody's stretch of the imagination. Like, so you weren't like, you were doing these things, and so, but you were doing them all in vain because you were dating a woman who didn't require the things that you gave to her. Right. Like, it's like, that's nice, but I don't require that. All she probably the only thing she required was that you not cheat on me, and you couldn't do.
Can you be nice to me? Can you be faithful? Or whatever the parameters were on their relationship, because everyone has different concepts of what a relationship violation was. Whatever he violated, like, that's what he violated. So at least operate within the parameters of what we have established is our relationship. You can't do that, then I can't be with you.
Right.
And so you can have your little Bentley back that you did not buy. Thank you for paying the lease on this, homie. Yes, go ahead and remove it from my driveway or whatever. Because you know what? She probably has 2 or 3 other cars anyway.
Right. And here. So it's like, it's corny. Like, just, corny. Like, if you felt like, so here's the reality, right? You felt wronged that she put, that she put that information out there. Did she lie? If she didn't lie.
I didn't see any negation to the fact, like
Right, because you didn't
he
say
didn't.
like, "Wow, I can't believe you out here lying on me. I never cheated on you." Because if that was the case, then just say that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, just say that. But that's not true.
Yeah.
And what she said is true. Now, like we're gonna keep it 100. Niggas a lie. Niggas will lie. So, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe a point in your favor about, not lying.
Mm-hmm.
But but the reality is like if somebody says something about you and you know that
And
it's
you
true,
know it's
like
not true. Yeah.
don't come out here publicly trying to, like throw smoke in the air and like
Mm-hmm.
do a diversion because, like you make yourself look whack to the people who got some sense. Now, to those of us who subscribe to misogynoir and being, trying to kind of thrive on the ability to discredit the word of a Black woman. I mean, like God bless. If that's what you get something out of. But for the people who got some sense, you're not going to be able to fool us because
Right.
we know what y'all do. We
Right.
hope that you won't do it, but we know what y'all be doing out here. So it's like, just simmer down, sir. Just take your L. And
Take your
really, it's
L
not an
and
L because
go.
you
The
take your
true.
L and
It's
go.
not an
It is
L,
truly not an
but
L because
just
the
go
reality is
away.
like, right, just go away. Because first of all, there's going to be another woman who is interested in
Right.
having a relationship with you. This is not going
Exactly.
to damper your
Clearly, because that's what ended this one.
hello,
So clearly. So
hello.
just go. You
Yeah,
take care, as she
yeah, take
said.
care, as Sweetie so elegantly said. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that was crazy. And you wanted to feel like you had your say in the situation, and it wasn't necessary. Like sometimes like standing in your own privilege means the ability to not say something when somebody like in your opinion disrespects
Disrespects
you or
you.
kind of or just puts your business out there in a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like as a man, like you really do have to understand that you have a privilege in the reality of being male. And in that, like sometimes you have to learn, like pick your battles and learn when it's appropriate to kind of like, to kind of rebut. And when it's appropriate, just be like, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you did something wrong. You did something
Right.
wrong.
You
Like just sitting there like, hey, throw your hands up and hey, you got it.
I will
Like,
back away from this one. It is what it is. You go on, you take care, you do your life. You'll see her music videos or whatever. I'm sure you will cross paths again.
yes.
And it is what it is. You keep it moving.
Yeah. And in honor of that, we would like to encourage you all to play Back to the Streets by Saweetie and Janae Aiko.
Oh,
It is
nice.
actually a bop, and it's fitting for this time because
Mm.
Quavo is back to the streets. And if you are interested, this is your chance.
Speaking of the streets, I don't know if you saw me post this like a month or so ago. I think it's just so funny. I got an email, and the sender was the streets.
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, the streets are calling me.
The
It's so
streets are
interesting.
calling.
Streets are calling me. They have
Partner, she
called you
doesn't mean
home,
it.
Quavo. They have called you home. Leave
I
me
guess.
alone. Go forth and do whatever it is you do,
Whatever that is.
whatever that is. So
So
let's get into this next. Some more mess.
more mess.
More mess.
More mess, you say?
Mm-hmm. It's so good.
Okay, so this one is everybody's been talking about it, so I'm pretty sure people can probably see this one coming if anybody reads the internets.
Yes.
So Derek Jackson and this situation with between him, his wife, and his alleged mistress, or mistresses.
I was gonna say I thought it was more than one. I'm hearing reports of more than one.
Yeah, yeah. So, just some background. Derek Jackson is a fairly popular YouTuber. I think he has like in the six figures of followers on YouTube.
Oh, that's so nice for him. I've
You
never heard
know,
of him before this moment in time.
right. The internet is a crazy place because stuff can be going on that you have never heard of, but
No,
it is like a whole
exactly.
thing.
Like what happens on white Twitter? I don't know.
Oh
Like
gosh,
what do they do over there?
we're
I just
being
know black
casseroles,
Twitter.
and oof, I'm gonna limit
But
it there.
yes,
Green
that's
bean
like a
casserole.
it's like a perfect example of I have no clue what's going on over there, but I know it's a thing.
Yeah, apparently it is a thing.
And so that's
So
how
yes,
this is
so
how like this relates to Derek Jackson. I had no clue he existed until
that,
this week.
I knew a little bit, and from what I knew was not from a great place. So, but I just more so knew that he existed, not necessarily anything about what he did or or where he did those things. So yes, this past week it came out that apparently Derek Jackson had some infidelity in his marriage, which if you listen to other people's accounts on this, most people did not even know he was married. So yeah. So that being,
for the listeners at home, my mouth just dropped open.
It did. And I didn't know that either. Like from what I did know about him, I was like, oh, I didn't know he was married. I just thought he was a man who talked stuff on the internet. And he is a self-proclaimed relationship coach.
Self-proclaimed.
So nobody's putting anything on him that he did not put on himself.
We didn't ask you for this, Derek. No. Jackson.
First of all, it's Jackson. Let's stop playing games.
He said, I'm gonna be edgy.
He's like, I always thought I would name a son this Jackson, Jackson.
That would be an interesting first name.
It would be a conversation starter, and so was him cheating on his wife. So, yes, so that came out over the past week, and his followers were not happy about that because, like, you are out here giving us advice on what we should do with men and men who are unfaithful, and had been very, very sharp-tongued about men who had been publicly unfaithful to their wives or
Clearly, he wasn't talking about himself. He said, "You hoes over there, pay attention to my words. Don't look at me though. We're not talking about me. We talking about y'all."
Right.
And these other shiftless people out here that you're dealing with. Don't sticks and stones over there.
Right. So and so what has basically kind of been the fallout of that is that his followership is mostly women, and he gives advice to women and is very critical of men, which I can relate to because men are trash. As a man, I can say that.
Oh, not all men, but yeah, men are trash.
Yes, and yes, we know that to be true with what you just said, which I am not going to repeat in my own privileges. But the reality is, like, men have created some issues in our world, and he has been very critical of men. But I think it's also like important as a man that you come from a place of either restoration or really trying to improve. But I don't feel like that was what his content was. I think his content was just being overly critical of men, gain the favor of women who had either women who have been scorned, and lots of women have been that way.
Amen.
But go ahead.
No, I was gonna say amen to that. Yes.
So yeah, kind of gaining the sympathy and the viewership of women who who are either looking for some really good advice, like from a man, from a male perspective. But and I also want to say that just because he cheated on his wife doesn't mean some of the things that he said was not true. Like a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yep.
So that was a mess. And so what also upset people was that then like in his apology video, like I think his second apology video, he brought has his wife in the video. So part of that is like, why
with her bonnet of righteousness.
I'm taking a moment to process that, because what I want to be very sure not to do is to drag a black woman.
I'm not trying to shame her.
No.
I'm not trying to drag her.
Right.
And what she said in one of her follow-up videos was, it tickled me so. Her bonnet of righteousness and her armor of God. Yes.
I see you see a green army sweater. Yes. I see the breastplate of righteousness. Yes, man, we're not talking about that.
Yes.
What was your husband's breastplate? That's what we need to be focused on. You don't even need to be a part of this. There's no problem.
Right. She actually did not need to be a part of this. Like, so he needs to,
Yeah, that was my thing. And I think, and far be it for me to agree with Charlemagne the God, but Charlemagne the God made a video in which, made his like donkey of the day for Derek Jackson, in which he basically said, like, first of all, like, this didn't have anything to do with her.
Right.
You were unfaithful. And it's clear that she is not like, I don't think her intention was ever to be anybody's public figure.
Right.
So why bring her out? Like, I think if for anything, like, you need to take those daggers on yourself, but don't open her up for ridicule, because the internet is cruel. Like, people are mean.
Yes.
And especially to have her in this space and not like, and not look the way that the internet would approve, which there's nothing wrong with the way that she looks. Like,
there's nothing wrong with the way that she looks. People were going to find something to say regardless.
Right.
Like, they're always going to try and blame the person who it just, Victim is coming up to mind, or the person who was harmed. The person who was
Yeah.
harmed.
Yeah.
They're always going to try and find something wrong with, quote unquote, wrong with that person
Right. And
to
yeah, that
justify for the other person who's committing the harm. And
right. And
once again, get out of here with that.
yeah, like it is, that is absolutely true. And that's basically what people did. I think more than anything, I will say I feel like for the most part, people kept their rage on him, but then it kind of became a shared piece, or like he gets the rage and she gets the ridicule.
Yes. Yeah.
So like it's like people are giving him that, the deserved anger, like yo, like you looking super whack out here, but she's getting kind of like the jokes and like the laughter, and that doesn't feel, neither of those things feel good. But from what, the perspective of what I can see from his personality versus hers is that he enjoys any attention.
Mm.
Whereas for her, I can't speak for her because I haven't watched a full video of her. Like I can only assume that somebody who has avoided the spotlight for this long with somebody with 100,000 followers, like,
Mm-hmm.
is that she didn't desire to be
Right.
in.
She did not sign up for this.
Right. So it's
And so
like,
it's fine if you want to do this, if you want to make your little videos and apparently the car or whatever, but that's not what she signed up for. I signed up to be a part of your life in this way. I'm going to support you through, whatever you would like to do, but keep me and my name out of it.
right.
Like, you do what you need to do, and I
Yeah.
will be over here.
Yes. With my bonnet and my breastplate of righteousness.
It actually looked more like a beret
Yeah.
that
Somebody
was
said it was a
worn
hat.
incorrectly.
Someone said it was a hat, and and shout out to her and her hat. Like, they're going through a time, and like, what I do not like is the faux religiosity that goes into the perspective that the devil is seeking to destroy marriages, and we are not going to let the devil win. Because here's the thing. First of all, the Lord ain't never promised nobody a husband or a wife.
Mm.
It says to find one is a good thing and that you should seek that, sure. But there's no promise and no guarantee that you are going to have a husband and or a wife. Now, that aside, for the biblical expectation of marriage, in my perspective and in what I know, and what, from what I've, seen, the expectation is that as a husband, you are to cover your wife. So don't lift the covering off of your wife and allow her to be at the mercy of all of these people with the expectation that the devil is trying to attack marriages, and you have to be strong in order to remain married to me, though I have been unfaithful to you, though I have not honored the vows that I have given, that I made with you in the Lord. Like, but you got to be strong no matter what happens. You got to be strong because the devil's trying to tear apart marriages. No, people are tearing apart marriages.
Yeah.
People are, behaving poorly. And sure, you can put the portion of like, sin and like, the sin nature, like in your flesh, kind of like drawing you away from certain things, like, sure. And you still have a duty to make sure that you are doing what you are supposed to do to uphold this relationship and uphold this marriage and to do the right things. If I get divorced from you because you are mistreating me, because you're mishandling me, because you're not doing what you vowed to do, and we have done all the steps necessary in order to kind of like to rectify the things that have been done, like, and to repair the relationship and rebuild, on this piece. Nah, like, we just got, like, you just we weren't compatible. You weren't going to be in a relationship with me and treat me how you want to treat me.
Yeah.
And that is on both sides of the fence. Whomever is getting married.
Yeah.
Both people need to be making sure that you are doing the work of taking care of your partner, of nurturing the growth in your partner, making sure that your partner is, like, being happy and satisfied and fulfilled. And that takes work. That takes mutual effort, and is not always the devil.
Yeah.
It ain't always the devil.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't like that rhetoric being put out there and, like, to excuse bad behavior.
Bad behavior, right? You made this choice. So
right.
With the thing I'll say when it comes to marriage is, it's a choice. You're making a choice every single day to stay married to that person and doing what is involved with staying married to that person. It's a choice.
Yeah.
And so, like you're saying, we can't use all of these extra things to try and justify this bad behavior or the fact that you made these choices. On those days that you were stepping out, you were choosing that.
Yeah.
And it just, we like to, people like to throw a lot of extra stuff into the pot. People like to throw a lot of extra stuff into the pot so that they won't
Mm.
have to be held accountable, so that they won't
Right.
have to come to terms or reckon with the behavior or the fact that they are now put in a situation where you chose this. Think about your
Right.
consequences. Think about what this is going to do. You've made yourself this public figure. So think about the fact that if someone found out, which they
Right.
did, what would
Mm-hmm.
happen?
Yeah.
And then you're now choosing to bring your spouse into the spotlight when, once again, she did not ask for this.
Yeah.
You're choosing to bring her in. She chose, she said yes. Hopefully she said yes. And
Yeah.
like this was something that she decided to like willingly step into. But once again, thinking about the consequences, and consequences can be good, bad, and different. I mean, we see every single day how people will sometimes rally around the person causing harm in certain
Mm.
ways and will ridicule, just like you said, ridicule the people who, the person who is being harmed. And it's just like, you need to redirect that energy,
Yeah.
redirect all the energy, because that
Yeah.
person over there, the person causing the harm, they made the choice.
Right. And yeah, so like, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. And it's like, we really have to do a better job at teaching. And so where that always takes me to is like, where does this come from? Where does this culture
Mm-hmm.
come from? How are we getting ourselves out of that place? And I think specifically, like, like in the, in the Black culture, in the Black community, is like, there's this saying, I think, well, the first time I heard it was Michelle Obama saying it, which is like, we love our daughter, we love our sons and raise our daughters.
Mm.
And like that perspective comes from a place, I don't know where that place comes from, but I feel like that is something that we really need to reckon with, because the reality is, just like we talked about with Saweetie and Quavo, like there is first of all, public sentiment will turn on her in a flip of a hat, right?
Yup.
So and that is exactly what we saw happen with Derek Jackson's wife. We saw women come out and be like, well, you were looking homely like that, so that's why he cheated on you. We saw men being like saying the exact same thing. Like, so there's this expectation that the woman is supposed to carry, so much of the weight and so much of the responsibility of the relationship by protecting it, by nurturing it, by making sure that there's no threat to the relationship. But the men in the space don't always have that same culpability, and we really need to get ahead of that by teaching our young men about marriage just the way we teach young women about marriage,
Right.
making sure that is a responsibility and a priority to them. And I was actually, crazy enough, I was watching the episode of Blackish yesterday, where they were talking about the difference between how Dre and Bo treated Diane and Jack.
Mm.
And so, like,
That was a good
Jack
episode.
could be right. He could be on
Yep.
Instagram shirtless shirtless and sweaty as a teenager, but she couldn't show her belly button.
Right. They shut that
Like,
down real quick.
and the reality is, like, we are always teaching women and girls to be overly careful about how you present yourself to the world, about how you put your body and your face and how you exist in the world. But there's not that same kind of care shown to men
Right.
men and boys who also have the an existing societal privilege to behave in any kind of way, and it's the boys will be boys. No,
Right.
boys will be men who are going to be held accountable for their
Yep.
action. You're not going to be out here wilding out because no, he can't get pregnant, but he can get someone pregnant.
Right.
And that is the impact, because a woman can't get pregnant by herself. And it doesn't just happen. That, like, that super passive language that we use with women and girls to justify basically abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at its core. So
I understand where people are coming from and wanting to care for their girls, their femme presenting children in a certain way, and wanting to educate them so that they can be safe. I hear that. I understand that. And there's another side to that coin. There's absolutely another side to that coin. At the same time that we're teaching our young girls, our young femme presenting folks, like, this is how you can carry yourself respectability politics is this whole other situation, but this is how
Yeah.
you can walk in the world and hopefully not be abused and hopefully not be harmed, because that's why we're trying to teach you this in this way. And
Mhm.
we also need to have the conversation with our boys,
Yeah.
with our young men, because they are the ones doing the action.
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
so if we
And
can change the overall system, we don't have to have these conversations, or at least we don't have to have them in the same way with our young girls. Change the
right.
system, change what's going on around us, change the water that we're swimming in so that we don't have to have these types of conversations. Same thing with how Black parents have to have the talk
Mm-hmm.
with their children.
Yeah.
If we could change the system around us, then we wouldn't have to tell our children at an early age to be on high alert when the police are present and
Yeah.
how to behave so that they can just make it home alive. We wouldn't
Right.
have to do that if the system were set up in a way that would actually protect us. But we don't have that.
Yeah.
I get it. We don't have that. And so how do we get there? We need to talk to all children and let them know that this is not going to fly. This is not how we operate. Respect goes both ways. Just because someone's wearing something doesn't mean that they're saying a certain thing about how
Yeah.
they want to be treated. It just, it's one of the things that scares me about having kids in the future, because I can only protect you so much, and I can try and do what I think is right or try and raise you up in the way I think is right, but someone can still get at you. Someone can still harm you,
Yeah.
or you can still harm someone
Mhm.
else.
Right. And yes, and I'm like, I think about that a lot too, because same, like, in the same boat as like, you're getting older and you're like, okay, like, am I really gonna have kids or like, no? And I think about that so much. I'm like, because you can be like, the best parent at every PTA meeting, doing all the things
Mhm.
that you really feel like, are important, and your children still turn out to be um
Heathens,
heathens. That's
hellions,
a good way to
rapscallions.
That's a good way to say that. So like, yeah, like they can still like be wild, because at the end of the day, like children are their own people. They are
Right,
they are young and they require guidance, but they can
right.
still be, like their own people. You can do everything that you can, and they're still going to be who they're going to be. So that is scary. And then the other side of that is like, you can raise fantabulous people and then they still become a victim of the world. Like this is a
Right.
terrible place. We see it so often that like, either the, people who are innocent, like getting caught up in situations that don't have anything to do with them, wrong place at the wrong time,
Mhm.
or like become a victim of somebody who is intentionally trying to victimize them.
Yep.
And it's like, what do you teach? Do you teach your child to be an absolute savage in order to survive? Or do you teach them to like to be a good person and to be good and be kind and, and be, do right, every time you have the opportunity to do so? And in turn, like, does that make them too soft? Like, it's a lot to consider, like raising children in this world, because in this country, let me say that, because like I don't know what it's
I
like.
don't know what it's like, yeah, outside of this
Yeah,
country. In this
outside,
country, absolutely.
right, outside of this country, in this context. So like in this country, it's like, what do you do? So
Yeah.
it's a catch 20, it's a catch 22 type of thing, and it sucks, and people suck. Derek Jackson is one of those people who sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Um,
don't know how we got here, but thanks a lot, Derek Jackson.
yes, this is how he got us on our existential crisis of having children.
That's another
So
topic for another episode of the Good Black Podcast.
it
Uh,
absolutely,
boy, oh boy, do I have some feelings around that as a
yeah.
33-year-old, like definitely able to make a baby time frame of my life. I'm like, how does this, what am I supposed to do now? I don't know. Like, we'll just, and then parents getting older, and I'm like, should I? So they can have
Yeah,
a thing to run after. I don't know.
that's
It's
true. I hope my parents.
it's
That's
it's
true. Like I think about
scary.
that too. I'm like,
It's
I want my children to have their grandparents
right.
around, and if I have children, I want them to have their
Yeah.
grandparents around and have a relationship with them, and so all the things.
It's scary. Parents out there, write into us at goodblackpodcast@gmail.com. What are your thoughts?
Yes. So
I mean, so let me actually clarify, not what are your thoughts as far as if we should have children in our relationships. What are your thoughts as parents
right.
raising children,
You did this.
especially in the world at large? What types of things did you worry about? What types of things were you proud of? All the things. Tell us your secrets.
I'm not listening. I need to make my decision myself.
Oh, no, I'm not asking you to
I'm
convince
kidding.
us.
I'm
No,
kidding.
Jade is firmly on the fence about that. We'll see.
Yeah.
It might have to be an accident for me. Like, oh, this okay. I
We
guess we're
always say
doing
that.
this now.
We always say that. My partner and I always say this,
Oh,
like it's gonna be a slip up. We'll
yup.
have kids, but it'll be like, here you go. Here you
Mommy
go.
had one too many wine coolers.
Baby on the way. So
No.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you may or may not have seen this in the news, just depending on how dialed in you are. It's definitely everywhere. We just wanted to give our thoughts and prayers, and just have a moment for the 10 folks who lost their lives in the Boulder, Colorado shooting at the King Soopers grocery store.
All right, so we are jumping into the Family Feud this week with a topic that I feel like we missed last week. We didn't miss it, but I think we just didn't have the opportunity to talk about it.
Well,
Um,
we only record every other week. We
right,
both have full-time jobs.
we
Y'all will
do.
be okay. And so sometimes stuff happens on the in between. Still
Yes.
relevant.
Yes. So this topic for this week's Family Feud is the debacle between Kirk Franklin and his son Carry-On Franklin, in which the latter leaked a phone call of of the gospel superstar Kirk Franklin, cussing his son out. He cussed him out real good, um, and it got interesting responses from the internet. But what it got us thinking about is like the establishment of of an adult relationship with your parents. So that I think that's a real thing that we are always kind of like, you're always kind of figuring that out, like like what is the line with your parents, like what sides of your life do you share with them, what don't you share.
Mhm.
First of all, are you required to share anymore? Which I think most people are can kind of agree, like, no, I'm not required to share these pieces with you. But I also think like the mental health component is important to kind of like factor into what's going on with with Kirk Franklin and his son, and in the fact that it's been disclosed by I think on both sides that there have been some like attempts to do counseling and various other things, um because of maybe something that the son is struggling with,
Mm.
perhaps. um so yeah, so like what's been your journey on like kind of like developing an adult relationship with your parents, because it's different than because you are always a child to your parents, right?
Right.
But you are no longer a child.
Right. Yeah, I'm always their child, but I'm not a child.
Right.
Um, so it has been interesting to say the least. In my situation, I won't say it's unique, but it's definitely one that, what do I want to say about this? So my parents got divorced when I was in high school, and that, I think that rocked everybody's world. That rocked my world.
Mhm.
And that threw us into this, me having to see them as full-fledged adults a little bit sooner than it might have with other people. Like from a child's perspective, like I think some children or some kids out there, they have parents on a pedestal or they see them in a certain light. They might not think of them as fully human until much later when they themselves have come more into their adulthood. And so I
Mhm.
was able to see earlier on, um, my parents as fuller humans compared to before we went through that family transition. Um, and so it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah.
Uh, I have solid relationships with both of my parents now. Um, and how we got there was it wasn't always pretty. It was not always pretty, because I can firmly and transparently say that there are moments in time where I was like, I need to establish my independence. And was I the most respectful in doing it? No, of course not. If you've met me, you know why. Um, but it eventually we got there, and we're learning more about each other every day. One of the things that, like, when it comes to, folks that have been in your life since you were brought into this world, and like seeing you transition and becoming this full-fledged human and adult yourself, they do still, like, especially if they've been away from you for a while, which my parents and I tell people, like, I went to college and then we all just kind of went our separate ways, and we
Mhm.
weren't physically around each other for years. Like, after college, I moved down to Peru, and then I was out in California, and now I'm, in the mid-Atlantic area. And so I haven't lived under the same roof with them outside of visiting since 2007. So there are parts of me that they think they know that they don't know. And so, now I'm much more respectful about, just letting them know that part of me, or what you thought you knew, is actually not the case. And this is Jade now. And I feel like as time has gone on, they've been more respectful and more receptive of that, rather than
Mhm.
trying to stay, whatever they thought the course was. And it's like, well, I thought you loved this. I thought you liked when we did this. Well, no, I don't. And so we can still do things together. We can still have XYZ, but like, if you actually want me to enjoy and participate, then it needs to look like this, just because that's where I'm at. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, they've been more receptive, um, to the adult Jade and like all parts of her. Now,
Mhm.
with that, what I will say is, because um I what's the best way to say this? As a child, I was quieter around them. And I think it was out of fear and respect.
Mhm.
And so some of that still slips out every now and then. And so I self regulate probably way more than I should when I'm around my parents.
Mhm.
Um, and like, that's a whole other thing. I'm working in it, I'm in counseling, I'm
Yeah.
an ever evolving human being. But as a whole, I feel like they see me as the adult Jade that I am. I don't know if that answers your question. It's a journey. It's not
Yeah.
easy. And it takes everybody involved, like, recognizing the transition that's happening, and respecting everyone as adults. Because that's a whole other situation in and of itself. You
Yeah.
know, people not respecting the process that you have to go through to get where you want to or need to be,
Mhm.
and what that looks like for you as an adult. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. Like, I don't really know what my like what that transition was like. I feel like for me, because I was always a super independent child anyway, I kind of already maybe had some of that a little bit built in. Like, I went and got my first job at 16 and came home. Mom was like, who told you to go and do that? And like, and was paying my, like my first cell phone bill at like 16,
I
17
remember
years
that.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so all of those things like were establishing for me, and like in a way that kind of I was already an independent child, and then it allowed me to kind of establish my own independence as I got older. So I didn't have the I don't think I had the like traditional route to that. And my mom is a talker, like, so she likes to talk about stuff. I like to talk about things. Like, we can kind of have conversations to some degree, because she's still my mama.
Hmm.
We can have conversations about things, and also have like respectful disagreements, like, when it's not, when we don't agree on something. But I don't think we have ever truly had like any disagreements on like treatment or like kind of like the bounds of like self-expression. I feel like
Mm.
my mom is very clear about like, all right, now don't cross no lines now. And that's kind of, and that kind of was just the like the thing that allowed us to have a boundary,
Mm.
that allowed us to have a relationship, because she would let us speak.
Mm.
So it wasn't the case that, like for me, it wasn't the case that for me, like I grew up with parents who, with parents who made me feel um that self-expression wasn't an option to
Mm.
some degree now, because I will say I've had a very honest conversation with my mom over the last, I was probably in the last year, about like how some of the things that she did and said when I was a child, made me feel like I was difficult, and so
Mm.
I worked overtime to not be difficult.
I feel that.
um and so like for like specifically for us, like as a kid, I was kind of like, I probably wasn't the nicest kid in the world. I'll own that. Because and I was always me. Like I'm very clear about like, boundaries. I don't want to be around anybody all the time. I don't want anybody in my space all the time. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like my own space. You know, I like to be in my own space, and I don't want to be aggravated. And I am easily aggravated. So I was, but I was always that person. And I think, and growing up, my mom made me feel like you are so mean. Like nobody's going to want to be bothered with
Oh
you.
yeah,
So,
I would get that
I
too.
adopted, yeah. So like I adopted these behaviors, like in these patterns of like people pleasing, and
Mm.
things that, and grew up kind of like not learning, but teaching myself how to be more, how to be more agreeable, and how to be more polite, and how to not say things, and and make people feel bad, or all of these things. But those things, like, as I became an adult, like I just started to recognize like these things don't serve me,
Mm-hmm.
because they leave me in situations where people are able to, well, not able to, but where people get the opportunity to do things and to say things to me and have how they feel be expressed, but I don't get the opportunity to express it back, because I feel like if I express anything that is contrary to what has already been shared, then I am being difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's going to want to deal with me.
That's so
And
interesting. Because I feel
like,
like I used to be the opposite. Like
yeah.
people would tell me I'm moody, I'm mean. Okay, cool. I'm gonna lean into that then. And
Mhm.
you just gonna have to deal with it. And that's how I would walk around for the longest time and have these walls up. But then at home, I'm this very, like, I'm getting different messages because it's like, oh, you're so sensitive. Like you will cry. Well, you basically cry at the drop of a hat, or if somebody raises their voice to you, well, yes, because you're hurting my feelings.
Yeah, and you matter.
You
Right? So
matter.
like, and
Right.
there's a
Yeah.
difference between like how your parents talk to you and your family talks to you, and then the way that like strangers on the street talk to you, because like I do not care
You have no
about what you
bearing in my
think.
life. Right.
Right, there's no bearing in my life, but like the reality of like, my parents saying these things to me, like you take it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think well, first of all, I am petty. And but I had this really, to me, like looking back now, like and I still do have like this really strange habit of like, okay, this thing doesn't work for you. I'm going to do the exact opposite, so much so that it is going to be so inconvenient to me, and it's going to hurt
Mm,
me so much that you will see it and you will feel bad. And that doesn't make sense,
I
because you are doing what the person asked you to do, and you're swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die.
yeah.
Like, like very, so like super unhealthy, and like, and now as an adult I can see that, and like that's not, that's not, that didn't
That's
make
called
sense.
growth.
Listen, shout out to Natasha Rothwell,
Yeah.
because the gift is impeccable. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a scene from Insecure in which, you know what that is.
Yes. Yes.
So, um, yeah, like, being able to acknowledge that, like, that you have adopted these ways of coping, and these ways of doing life, really, as an adult, like that doesn't serve you, and it really doesn't help anybody. For me, I really learned so much about myself, like in my, in my relationship, and being able to see myself in certain spaces, which is why, like, I'm grateful that I have a partner who, like, they got some sense too. So, they're able to kind of like lay it out and like, do you see that? Like,
Mhm.
you don't see how that's like unhealthy.
Once again, that is a episode, that's another podcast episode. Because when I tell you that these partners just be out here getting us together,
Attacking,
I didn't sign up for this,
I,
sir or
for
ma'am.
you,
I didn't sign up for this.
right.
Why are you being so mean? You're just pointing out the truth? Well, stop it. I didn't call
I
for this.
don't need that. I didn't ask you for that. Thank you so much.
Like
Continue lying to me.
having the right partner will help you grow in ways that you did not realize you needed to grow. But that's another
Right.
episode. That's
It
so another
re-
episode.
it truly is,
Shout
and
out
I
to both
think,
of them because
yeah, yeah, like seriously, and I'm very, it is frustrating. Let me be clear. It is frustrating, but it is for the overall betterment of yourself as an individual. Because the right person will make you a better person, right? It'll allow you to kind of like see yourself. But again, another episode. So yes, seeing those things and being able to recognize them and kind of like take a backwards journey, almost of being like, where did this come from, and like why am I this way? Because that's not like, from the outside looking in, I can see and hear like that's not smart.
Mhm.
Like that doesn't help you, doesn't help the situation. And kind of as an adult, again, going back to the core of like where I started, like being able to have that conversation like with my mom, and also being in a space where it's like, I don't need you to apologize for this thing. I don't need you, like there's nothing
Yeah.
you can do, like, quote unquote, to correct it. And I'm not nailing you to the cross for it, but I do want you to know that it happened. And I
Mhm.
want us to like be able to talk about it and like, establish that like this is a thing. Like,
Yeah.
and the being able to have the both and of, and this is not saying it's about my mama in particular, but like, or my relationship with my parents in particular, but parents in general, is like, they screwed you up and they were doing the best they could.
They were doing the best that they could with what they had and what they knew.
Right.
And
So
so
like,
we have to hold all of that stuff.
right. So, and kind of like understanding that, like, in some cases, because I know that there are also people who have terrible parents who are intentionally
Mhm.
terrible to them. So I don't want to, to
That's a
ignore
whole
that.
other situation, but yep.
Right. Yeah. Don't want to ignore that. But for me in my situation, is like, no, I absolutely know that my mother loved me and she would do anything for me, would then and still will now. And we picked up some unhealthy patterns, like in childhood, and it's not, it's not wholly her fault or their fault, but it is something that happened. And I think as a child, like, I just internalized the message that you are too much, and in
Mhm.
a way, again, that was unhealthy, and my processing of it as a child was
Mhm.
unhealthy for me. Whereas now as an adult, I can go back and be like, okay, like, like, you heard that, and what may have been more useful then is to apply it to a situation and not to your perpetual state of being.
But as a child, you can't do that. We like as
You need out.
children need very concrete things.
Yeah.
Like that's how brains work. That's where they are in that stage of development. But of
Right.
course, people don't know that. And so children then internalize, parents may or may not know, and they move on because they're like, well, I said it to you once and I'm fine to move on, but you don't know that your child is then internalized and it's like covering all of this other stuff or all of their other actions. It
Right.
wasn't I've had conversations with my mom in I'll say the last decade, and we've talked about stuff that I remember as a kid. And she's like, I didn't know that that's how you thought about that. I didn't know that that's how it impacted you. Well, I mean, why would you? Because it was said and then we move on. But yeah, it stuck with me
Yeah.
because my little baby brain needs concrete things.
Yeah.
And it's just how most children are wired. Like they, one of the things that they tell folks when they're getting divorced is just to reiterate the message that if they do have kids, that it's not your fault. And it's because children will take so much on without us even
Mhm.
realizing it.
Yeah.
And so having those reassurances in place can be really helpful. But if you're not even aware that that's a thing, which, like I said, most people aren't, you're going on with your adult brain like, well, we were able to move past this. And for the child, that's not often the case.
Yeah.
And it manifests in different ways. And the other thing I'll say is that I'll say also within the last decade, both of my parents have apologized for several different things.
Mm.
Um, and they weren't apologies that I asked for, but once it happened, I was like, I think I needed that. I think I did need that.
Mm.
We were able to have some very honest conversations. Um, and it was beautiful. I've also apologized to them as well. I like the first time I ever apologized to my mom that I can remember, like about some of the things that I did, especially as a child, and especially as my parents were divorcing and going through that process, was I think it was like 21 or 22. Like I just happened to be sitting down and thinking about my life up until that point in time, because I probably was not studying for some exam that I needed to actually study for anyway. Um, and yeah, I remember talking to her and apologizing. And I've apologized to her a couple times since then about some other stuff too. But yeah, my parents have both apologized to me. And like I said, it wasn't anything that was asked for, but it was needed in the moment and I didn't realize it. And we were able to move to a new level in our relationship. And so that was helpful for me. That was really helpful for me. And it takes a level of self-awareness for them to be able to do that. Self-awareness and like putting whatever piece of ego that might pop up in
Mm.
that away.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and I love them and so appreciate them for that. So yeah.
Yeah. That's a like important part that I think that you brought up is like the ego piece of just understanding that, like, like let me set this to the side because I can acknowledge that, like in this space, in this, but in this moment, like what I did was harmful.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, like what you did may, you may not have felt like it was, wrong, in the moment, but being able to acknowledge that, like, yes, I could harm, harm my parents, or I could have done something to cause
Mm-hmm.
harm too. And even though, yes, I have been harmed as well, I am not going to going to justify the thing that I did based off
Right.
of my own harm,
Right.
because you all should have known better because you all were the parents, like,
Right.
while that is not untrue, it doesn't nullify the fact that, like, yeah, I did some stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I was, unlike you, I was an angel. So
What?
ain't no apologies coming from me. So if you waiting
Okay.
on it, you could wait.
I'm a
I'm
tell.
kidding. I am kidding. If my mother, if my parents
I'm
told
gonna
me,
call her
like,
right now.
don't you do that. If my mama, if you listening, if you told me that I did something that was harmful for you, I would absolutely, apologize. And I might have to explain it. I might have to give you a
Mm-mm.
little context.
Auntie, don't listen to him. He said he is not apologizing.
I am kidding. I am kidding. Yes, I love all my parents.
Mhm.
Interestingly,
Mm.
so I had not had a relationship with my birth father
Mhm.
since middle school, elementary school. It's been a while. And on my 30th birthday, I got a call from a number that I did not recognize.
Mhm.
And
Did you actually answer? Because I just be looking at the phone like,
I
I
usually
don't know
do.
anybody in Colorado. Who that?
Right, I
Wisconsin.
usually
Uh,
do, but I'm like, it's my birthday, and I'm like, it could be anybody. The area code's from my hometown,
okay.
so I'm like, oh, okay, it could be anybody. Like, I don't know who this is. So answer the phone. It was my father,
Mm.
and I had spoken to him, like, in a couple years prior to that, like, briefly. And then, and since then we have had a much more consistent relationship. He calls me a lot.
Mhm.
So, we actually talk a lot, but kind of like establishing an adult relationship with somebody, like with a parent who does not
Mm.
know you,
Mhm.
has been interesting.
Mhm.
Because the reality is, I'm like, sir, you don't have to call me every other day because I don't require that. Like,
Right.
And also I don't have time.
Yeah.
But like the kind of like the awkwardness that comes in that, because it's like it's weird because I don't know how to tell you this thing about me, but I really need you to learn it because it is,
Mm,
because we are having this relationship, it is impactful to us, like having the relationship,
right.
because I need you to understand, like, that I have boundaries. I don't talk to my mama every day. And she was always there, like, so trying to
Yeah.
establish that and like have a relationship like with in that be really a hindrance, because you don't know me, that be a hindrance is difficult to navigate because it's just kind of awkward,
Mhm.
right?
Do you
Being like,
think he's trying to make up for lost time?
absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. And what I will also say in defense of him is like, every time I did speak to him,
Hmm.
though few and far in between, he always was very clear about the fact that he loved me. He would
Hmm.
always say that. He would always be, very like, I am, I'm proud of you. Like, I want you to, keep doing your thing. And then there was, other parts of the conversation that not like bad or
Hmm.
negative, but just other things that don't need to be repeated.
Got it.
But yeah, so like it yeah, so that was always very clear, from his perspective. But I also, like, as really, by the time like 30 years old rolls around, like I'm grown, like, also
Right.
kind of like, you sure? Because you got a way of showing it, but you got a way of showing it, because
Mhm.
the love is an action verb.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not a like, a constant state of being. It is something that, in my opinion, that you do, that you show, and I can honestly say he has shown up, and he has truly tried, and he has truly put in the effort, to be able to like show that to be true from this point. But at the outset of that, I was like, huh? I looked at like I know, when my partner looked at me and I answered that phone, she was like, ooh, what's that?
Hmm.
Because I was like, I'm sorry. I was so shocked. But yeah, so like kind of establishing an adult relationship with a parent, estranged or otherwise, like is it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But I think most things in life are uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Like, you suck at everything a little bit before you get good at it.
Right.
And I think, for anybody listening who's trying to kind of like figure that out, is like, figure out your own boundaries, figure out
Right.
your own things that you desire for your
Yeah.
relationship
That's
to look
so
like,
important.
yeah, like as an adult, and then figure out how to communicate that. Because I think what happens oftentimes is, as an adult, we get obsessed with the idea that I can communicate this in any way I want to because I'm grown and ain't nobody paying my bills. And
Right.
the reality is, you still, in order to keep relationship with anybody, you still have to be able to do it in a way that's palatable for the other party,
Hmm.
to some degree.
To some degree,
To
right?
some degree.
Because there can be a very fine line between uh, not just communicating boundaries, but putting yourself in a situation and being in a situation that's harming you. And so
Right.
just having to walk that or walk it back, like to some degree, yeah, taking
Yeah.
consideration to how something is being presented will be helpful. Now, if folks are just being wildly disrespectful,
That's different.
gloves come off. Gloves come
Yeah.
off.
Like, you
And I
get,
need to say
yeah.
it with my chest a little bit, and that's
Right.
fine.
And that is okay, and that is okay. But I think, like, when you are in the space of like, trying to establish relationship, and you're thinking about it, and you're trying to kind of correct some wrongs, and and right some stuff that's happened. It's important to also, give them a chance, at
Hmm.
first, give them an opportunity to be like, hey, like, I wanted to talk about this thing, whatever the case might be. Or sometimes it's just like, I think for some people it's simpler than what I think probably what we have expressed, which is like just establishing the understanding that, like, yeah, like, I'm 21, or not 21, but I'm a young adult,
Hmm.
and I don't have to mama, I love you, and I don't have to explain to you why I bought this $500 purse. I bought it because I can afford it, and that's all we did. we
Yeah.
we don't have to continue we don't have to really talk about that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
you know
But it's so, like coming out of a space where you're constantly under someone's roof and you're having to explain all your decisions and then move transitioning into a space where you don't really have, like, it's at your discretion whether or not you tell them certain things. It is so weird to be in that, or it
Yeah.
was for me anyway.
Yeah.
And so the moment I realized I don't have to tell you everything, um, it was very interesting. It was very interesting. Um, like I get to direct the information that flows out. Um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
another wild space to be in, but that transition is also very interesting because, like you're saying, I pay the bills up in this apartment. I don't have to share anything with you.
Uh-huh.
Like, it is a privilege for you to have this information. I want to share this certain information with you because this is a part of, like, maintaining our relationship and you actually knowing things about me, so that when we do talk, we have this breadth of conversation. um but yeah, I just and my mom has had to coach me through that as well.
Yeah.
Like, Jade, it's okay if you don't want to tell me. Okay, cool, cool. So I'm not going to.
Cool.
Uh,
Leave that out. You're good.
I'm
You're
gonna
good.
leave it out. But no, she's had to coach me through that. I'm like, whatever happens in your house is what's happening at your house.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could tell me or not. It's fine. I'm not gonna get mad if you don't tell me because I
Yeah.
won't know. That's right. You won't know. You won't know.
You're right. Which is a beautiful thing, like to be able to have parents who kind of like who are able to say that to you. Because I think
Mhm.
a lot of times, especially again in Black communities, it's a Black show, so we Black. So a lot of times in our communities, there's like parents. I think, and I've seen this in other people's. I can't say this has been my experience. I have a difficulty with letting go and kind of like letting your children be their own people and be
Yeah.
their own adults. I think that's hard, and I can understand that being difficult because it's like I've raised you, like I did everything for you, and like now you're just
Mhm.
trying to act like you don't need me no more. Like,
Right.
and it's
But
like,
that's the goal, people. That is the
right,
goal.
right. It's like parents, you got to kind of adjust. Like the goal is for you to, for you
Yeah.
to mature them and for you to raise them into being responsible people and to being good people.
Right.
And then once
The
you've done that, like, go live your life,
Go live your
go get the
life.
group back,
And so
and
it's not that we
all of a
don't
sudden,
need it's not that we don't need you. It's just that now you
right.
have moved into a different role. This is another thing my mom and I talked about. Like, we take
Yes.
a step back and we think about the fact that you go from raising me and, like, I'm under your care 24/7, don't let me die,
Yeah.
to a matter of, now we've reached this point where you, as my parent, you can be a guide. You can be,
A
like,
consultant, if
you
you
can be
will.
a consultant. That's the exact word that she used.
Yeah.
You are now my consultant.
Yeah.
And so you can help put up some guardrails, but you can't put me in, like, the clear cut fence that we once had. And you don't want to do that. So you can be my consultant. I can reach out to you. I can bounce ideas off of you. You can be my thought partner. But it's not that we don't need our parents. It's just that the role changes. It changes.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing about when you're able to establishing that type of relationship, because then you as a parent are able to go and do and re-enter certain things, or cultivate new relationships, and it opens up the world for both people.
Hmm.
It's not just so, like, one way street.
Yeah.
But yeah, you go from, like, raising and careering to, now I'm a consultant and my hours are from 9 to 5.
Yeah. Then after that, now.
After that, you better be bleeding and need some bail money or something, don't, like, you know.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. And just as a like an aside to kind of close some pieces off. So adult relationships with people who knew you as a child.
Ooh.
Um, so okay, so sorry to cut you off, fam, but we have to do it. We'll finish our story and the show next week, so make sure to join us next Monday on the Good Black Podcast to hear more. Thank you for listening, and if you want to share your own experiences with navigating adult relationships with your parents, please send us your story at goodblackpodcast@gmail.com. That is GOODBLACKPODCAST@gmail.com. Thank you again so much for listening, and you will hear from us next time.